and welcome back to Full Force Combat. I am Nathan and I'm joined by a fellow Nathan, but not just anyone. It is UFC fighter Nathan Fletcher. How are you doing today?
I am doing very good, my friend. Thank you for having me on. Sorry, I was just trying to adjust my phone there to make sure nobody messages me during this interview. But yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having us.
And a few weeks out from your second UFC fight, how's preparations going for that? How's camp going?
Yeah, it's going very well. I'm literally 2 weeks now till weigh-in, so pretty much at the back end of camp. All the hard work's been done. So the next 2 weeks look like just fine-tuning, bringing my weight down a little bit more, and getting there fit, healthy, ready to go. So I'm excited. The work's been put in. It's nearly go time now. So yeah, very happy with where we're at.
And it's a familiar opponent to you, Caolan Loughran, someone you have fought before in, I believe it was your amateur days. What is the difference from fighting someone you know before, but it's so long ago? Does it play a part into your preparation at all?
Not necessarily for me so much. No, I think that might be more on his end. For me, it's obviously competitively we've gone against each other before, and I come out on top. So that is in the back of my mind, but I think it'll probably play more of a factor on their end. For me, I'm just preparing for a fight. I'm getting ready. I've watched him. I've studied him, broken down his game. So because his game has changed quite a bit since I first fought him. So in terms of like preparation, I'm treating it like a whole new fight. Do you know what I mean? But obviously, you can't hide the fact we have gone against each other before, and I got the job done last time round. So I think that'll be in the back of his head, definitely going into this one.
I was going to ask, is there any areas of his game that you feel have developed since then? Obviously, it was during your amateur days, so it would be a bit. You'd assume that there's been plenty of development since.
To be honest, after I beat him, I feel as though he kind of carbon copied my game a little bit. I think that when we initially fought, he was more of a striker, a bit more movement based, switch stance a lot, was a bit more flashy. And then since that loss, that's when he moved over to Liverpool to start training here, and he became a grappler, shooting, taking people down, double legs, taking the back, very similar to what my game is. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's like I'm facing myself almost in there now with the way he fights. So yeah, I feel as though that, I don't know, maybe our fight had something to do with why he ended up changing his style and becoming more of a grappling based fighter. But yeah, that's where my head's at with it.
And obviously there was that viral clip of Paddy telling him in no uncertain terms what you would do to him in the cage. Did you see that? Were you there for that, or did you see that clip on just your phone? And what did you take away from that?
I wasn't there at the time. No, I was on the UFC coach for the Manchester card last year, but I obviously saw the clip. Yeah, and it's funny, and it is what it is. Paddy's very good at chatting shit. He's very good at getting in people's heads and winding people up. So I think Caolan definitely bit a little bit to that, and I think it affected him more so than it affected Paddy, that exchange. I think Paddy got the upper hand in it anyway, but that's not really my style, my game. Do you know what I mean? I'm not much of a shit talker. I'm not too arsed about getting into verbal altercations with him. I'll leave that for Paddy to wind him up and do that for me. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it is what it is. I think obviously, if anything, it creates more sort of commotion for him around the fight because he's having to deal with my team, my training partners and stuff like that as well. Whereas I'm just focused on him. And I think his attention is maybe not necessarily 100% focused on me and a little bit around the externals around the fight. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's almost the fact that you weren't really involved in it mean that can sort of create a storm outside of you, and you just are focused on this fight, and you don't really have to worry about any sort of backlash because, again, it didn't really involve you, just your name.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what is it anyway? It's just a bit of beef, just two people going at it, giving each other shit. Like it's completely irrelevant compared to what's going to go down in the cage. It has no sort of play on that for me. I'm just focused on my skill set, improving myself as a fighter, and I think that that's ultimately when the cage door locks. That's all that matters anyway, and all the externals, all the beef, rivalries, whatever it is surrounding the fight won't be playing a factor. It'll just be skill sets, and I believe that I've got a better skill set than him. So yeah, very confident.
And obviously your UFC journey that started on The Ultimate Fighter. What was that like being on it must have been a different experience being on sort of like a television show about fighting rather than just getting in on the Contender Series or something like that?
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. It was not the route I thought I'd ever end up taking, going on the Ultimate Fighter, to be honest. But I'm very glad that I did it now. I think that whole process developed me as a man, not just as a fighter, because it's challenging. They take you away from your family, they take you away from your friends, your coaches, your usual setup and routine, and you're put in this house with a bunch of people who you don't know. You've got to be competing against. You've got no connection to the outside world, so it's very intense process for the weeks that you're there. And it's kind of like trial by fire getting into the UFC. All of a sudden, you're there every day. You're in the PI, you're in the Apex, you're fighting there, you're training there, you're around UFC stars. It's very, it just becomes the norm very quick. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like it was a good way for me to get accustomed with the UFC, because then when I went back in the summer and, well, September, I ended up fighting. It all felt familiar because I'd been living there for 2 months already at the start of 2024. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, interesting experience overall.
And did that sort of bedding in process help with the fact your first fight was also at the Apex? So you weren't in a completely new environment when you stepped out there on that fight night, rather than go into a big arena and having all of that. So did that play a part in perhaps how comfortable you were in that first UFC fight?
Potentially, yeah. I think the arena's never really played too much of a factor to me. I don't necessarily think that a crowd overexcites me or overwhelms me. I quite like the crowd. I feel like I get quite a lot of energy from a good atmosphere to take in there with me. I feel like it almost fuels my performance as opposed to tips me over the edge. Do you know what I mean? So I don't necessarily think that was the case, but it was a familiar environment. Obviously, my opponent was somebody who I'd trained with on the show, so I kind of knew their skill set as well. So that was a nice bit of familiarity going in. So I was very, very comfortable because I just had a feel for how it was all going to go. And it was quite easy in like the visualization process to picture fighting in the Apex, because I already had picture fighting my opponent, Gigamantis, because I trained with him multiple times, sparred him in the Ultimate Fighter. So it was a lot of familiarities, yeah, made it a bit easier.
And a second round finish. What was that feeling like when you get that submission and that first like 30 seconds, minute afterwards? What did that feel like for you?
Yeah, it's hard to put into words, to be honest. It's just, that is the reason we do this. Do you know what I mean? The reason we're grinding every day, training, putting our bodies through it, putting our mind through it. You know, the stress over the years I've had to overcome to get even into the UFC, to start my, like, for most people now who are going to see me on this world stage, this is the start of my journey. But in reality, it's like, it's been years getting to this point. So when you get that win and you know that you're in the UFC, which has been a childhood dream, it's just absolute relief. Do you know what I mean? It's everything that I've been working for. So it's very hard to put into words how that feels, but relief's a good one. It's a big like weight off your shoulders of, right, okay, we've done it now. We've achieved the first major goal that I've set for myself. So yeah, very, very nice feeling.
And this is your first UFC event outside of the Apex. I mean, you're in the UK. How much are you looking forward to going out there in front of that crowd at the O2?
I can't wait now. I'm so excited. It's getting to that point where every night going to bed, it's the last thing on my mind. I'm thinking about it and visualizing the walkout and visualizing all the fight week process. And as I said, look, I'm someone who loves MMA. I'm a fan of the sport. I've been doing this since I was like 13, 14 years old. And this is all what I've dreamt about. So I'm just grateful to be here. I want to take it all in. Go through the whole process. The O2 in London is like an iconic venue. That's kind of the UK's home show for the UFC. And I've been to a couple myself. I've watched my teammates, Paddy and Molly, fighting there. And I've seen them walking out in front of 20,000 people. And I've thought one day that's going to be me making that walk. And then now, 2 weeks' time, here we are. I'm going to be doing it. So, yeah, very excited and just grateful for everything that's got me to this point now.
And you have fought at the Indigo previously. I mean, does this feel like a graduation almost, right? You are now here on the big stage because you've done it technically in the O2 because the venue is there, but now you're in the main event sort of thing.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, it's like a graduation. It's I remember fighting in the Indigo. I fought there on New Year's Eve, so it was very quiet. There wasn't a lot of fans at the event that I fought on. And I remember stood outside the O2 before the event and looking at it. And again, it's just like a visualization process. But I knew within me, I was like, I'm going to be fighting in the big arena pretty soon. Like, we're getting there now. And then look, it's about 2 years on from when I fought in the Indigo. Yeah, just over 2 years, I think it'll be, because it was 2022 New Year's Eve. So it'll be, yeah, about 2 years and a few months since that fight. And now I'm finally fighting in the big arena. So Yeah, everything I've worked for, very excited, very grateful, just happy to be here, lad, to be honest. So let's go, roll on the 22nd.
And you mentioned starting as a teenager. How did you get into MMA? What was that process like for you getting started and making that first walk into an MMA gym?
So, sorry, but if you can hear the background noise there, I'm just sat in the gym and someone's just like playing some rock music through the next door. So apologies if that's coming through on the speaker. But to answer your question, I got into MMA. Yeah, I was just in school. I went to an all boys school. I was all right at football. I was doing a lot of sports as a kid. I wasn't necessarily going to be a Premier League football star, but I always wanted to be a professional athlete. So I knew so even going before that, before the athlete route, I knew that I wanted to be able to defend myself. So fighting was always something that was not necessarily prevalent, but it was like being in an all boys school, being quite a small kid. I was always aware of conflicts around me. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't want to be in a situation where I couldn't defend myself. So that was initially what attracted me to combat sports. So I ended up, one of my friends at the time, Kieran, in school, he was doing MMA before anybody else really was. He had an older brother called Aaron as well, who got him into it. So I just started training with them at a local club close to Southport, where I live, in Southport. And then I very quickly fell in love with it. And then going back to that of wanting to be an athlete, I always thought when I was a kid, I was visualising playing for Liverpool or playing, for a Premier League team and scoring a goal and having the crowd cheer. That quickly transitioned into watching the UFC events and being like, okay, I'm not quite going to make it as a footballer. I'm not good enough. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to chase this. And from when I started the sport, literally 13, 14 years of age, I was like saying to me mate Key, I'm going to be in the UFC. This is what I'm going to do now. I've decided, and literally haven't looked back since. Do you know what I mean? It's been all focused since then. Obviously, there's been some parts. I was still a kid. I was still going out doing things, 15, 16, 17, stuff like that. But then when I found Next Gen, I came here at 18, and then that was obviously the best decision I ever made. So from then, it's been all in on MMA.
I mean, Next Gen is, we've spoke to quite a few fighters from there, and I mean, you've used the phrase, well, you hear the phrase iron sharpens iron, and I don't think there's a gym more prevalent with that than Next Gen. What is it like training there? And it must just be so beneficial to have those rounds with guys that are just on that level with you.
Yeah, definitely. It's brilliant to see our level. I just feel like even where I've trained elsewhere, I've been in Vegas, I've been on stuff like The Ultimate Fighter, I've felt the level of other guys. Do you know what I mean? I've seen how other gyms train, other gyms operate. And it used to be this thing for British fighters where you think, you've got to go to America, that's where the high level is, that's where you get the training in. But honestly, I've never been anywhere and felt the same level of the guys in here. I genuinely believe we're a world-class gym. I think our coaches are so on that front line of innovation in MMA. I feel like they were so smart. We're developing new systems and introducing stuff that I feel like other people aren't even aware of yet. And if it's other trends that other teams are maybe starting, we're cottoning onto it and stealing that stuff for ourselves. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like it's just a good mixture of super high level talent, a good environment where everyone gets on, everyone's helping each other and working together, and then elite level coaches that are seeking out the best stuff from all combat sports, not just MMA, from boxing, kickboxing, judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. Our coaches study like every martial art and pick the best bits for MMA. So I feel like we're innovators in the game.
And do you look at people like Paddy and Molly who have had real success in the UFC and sort of see them as a mark to be like, look, this is where I can get to, and even further than that?
Yeah, 100%. It's nice to, obviously, I've always been a little bit, not delusional, but I've always believed I could do it anyway. I've always thought that I was going to be a world champion. But then when you have people from your team, from the same background as you, doing the same thing day in, day out, and they're getting there and you're seeing their success, it's nice because it just reaffirms that in my head. It's like, okay, well, my teammates are doing it. Do you know what I mean? They're literally living the dream now. So it's attainable for them. It's attainable for me. I can do it as well. And that's kind of what you've seen. I think when one person starts having success, and then, well, with Paddy and Molly, we had two really forefront. They're the runners for the gym. And then now you've got myself coming through behind. You've got Luke Riley, who should be in the UFC already. You've got Adam Cullen, who's going to be in the UFC pretty soon. You've got Liam Gittins. The list goes on and on and on. You know what I mean? We've got Shamrock as well. We've got an absolute map full of killers. And I feel bad saying those names because I've left some people out there. But like we've got so many people coming through. Do you know what I mean? That should be in the UFC and will be in the UFC in the next few months and years. So it's an exciting time.
And with his name being probably synonymous as we spoke about earlier, I mean, we've got to talk quickly about Paddy Pimblett, Ilia Topuria moving up to lightweight. Do you feel that fight will happen in the future if he gets past Michael Chandler?
I hope so. In a perfect world, selfishly for me, Paddy would headline the card against Topuria, and I'd fight his brother on the undercard or on the main card somewhere. Slot that one in. But I feel that's a fight that could happen, and I feel it's a fight that's going to surprise a lot of people when it does happen, because styles make fights. Do you know what I mean? And I believe Paddy. I don't know if you've seen Paddy in person, but he's a big lightweight, big, strong, athletic lightweight, and Topuria's coming up. I think that the majority of the MMA fan base would be like, "Oh, Topuria will just knock him out, see what he does to everyone." But styles make fights, and Paddy has got, I think, the perfect style to beat Topuria. So I really hope that fight happens.
We'll see. I like that.
I want to fight his brother on the undercard as well. Yeah. So let's make that happen.
I like that shout. I mean, we've got obviously this fight coming up. What can we expect from you versus Caolan Loughran in 2025?
Listen, for me, you can always expect a finish. I'm coming in there to get the job done. I'm not looking to score points or, out position, control my opponent. I want to get him out of there, whether that means strangling him, which 9 times out of 10, that's what I tend to do, go in and look for the submission and get the choke, or if it means knocking him out, I'm coming in to finish, put him out of there. I am fitter than I've ever been, stronger than I've ever been. I'm more sharp. I'm skilled. My skill set is just leveling up constantly. So I'm coming in ready. Do you know what I mean? Ready to take his head off and get into it. So you can expect a finish from me.
And all going well, what are your goals for the rest of 2025?
Obviously, this is it for me. This is the big one. Obviously, for me, it feels like a UFC debut. Obviously, I had that one in September, but that was in the Apex. It was still connected to the Ultimate Fighter. This is a hometown show. I'm going to have the short saying Fletcher on. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to have all the proper UFC fight week. So this is it for me. But obviously, all goes well. I'd like 3 fights this year. I'd like activity. I want to work my way through the ranks. And it's the same as everyone who's in this sport, but I've got my eye on the world title. That's where I'm heading. So whatever I've got to do, whatever fights I've got to take. Don't get me wrong, I'm not delusional. I know that I've got some journey to go before I get there, but get this one done. Constantly looking to put guys away, finish them, make statements, and work my way up towards that ranking and the title.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us. Just one more thing, if for those who somehow are aware of us but not aware of you, where can the fans find you on socials?
So I need to up my social media game. To be honest, I'm not massively big on it all, but I've got Instagram's Nathan Fletcher _ and my Twitter is the same, Nathan Fletcher _ I think I'm pretty much that on all my socials. I do have a YouTube, which I think is just Nathan Fletcher, or maybe Nathan Fletcher 135, but I've been slacking on the uploads. I've only got about 2 videos out in the last 5 years. So, but after this one, we'll see. Maybe I'll earn enough money to pay a videographer and get it all done. But yeah, Nathan Fletcher _ that's me on the socials. So follow me to keep up with my career.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time and best of luck on the 22nd of March.
Thank you, mate. Nice to speak to you.
Nice to speak to you. Thank you.